evening. Something I've started doing since I came here to be a vicar at St. Mark was get a subscription to Netflix. And with that Netflix subscription, I probably watched far more movies than I ever really should. And something I've noticed is specifically in scary or horror movies. And that's not generally a genre I really gravitate to, but I've seen enough of these kinds of movies that I've been able to see kind of a pattern, a theme, a general thing about this genre that I think is pretty much always true. And that's in any kind of scary movie, no matter what the subject matter is, no matter what the plot of the movie is. The scariest scenes aren't ever when you can see the monster or the murderer or whatever the antagonist of the movie is. The scariest scenes don't happen when that person or character is on screen. It's always the scariest points right before something is about to happen. When you see the hero kind of moving through a dark jungle or forest and you know something's about to happen to them, but you don't know what. And I think filmmakers, for a long time, have really known that this is the scariest part. They play that up more than anything in these movies. Because the thing that scares us the most isn't any kind of monster or alien or any kind of thing that we find in these scary movies. The scariest part of that is the unknown. It's knowing that something bad is about to happen, but not knowing what or how or what to do to avoid it or prepare yourself. And I think it's this kind of situation that in our gospel lesson that we'll read later, that the disciples find themselves in. The disciples in our gospel lesson are gathered together in what will be their last meal with Jesus, their last time they're all together in one place. And there's so much uncertainty and unknown. No one really knows what's going to happen in the next few hours or few days. Jesus' arrest at that point is imminent. Jesus has been talking about all kinds of cryptic messages about the Son of Man. The disciples don't know what's going to happen, who's going to be arrested, whether they'll be rounded up with Jesus or not. All of these things are unknown. And I can only imagine it's a terrifying situation. But in the midst of all of that, in the midst of this room, the last time Jesus and the disciples are all together in this one place, Jesus does something that's really pretty strange. He washes their feet. Now, to be fair, at that time in Palestine, washing someone's feet wasn't completely unheard of. It's something that people did. But it was pretty much strictly for a hygiene kind of thing. You see, at that time, people really only traveled on their feet on dirt roads with sandals. So washing your feet is something you really have to do. And it was something that was generally done by a servant or a slave in a household. They would wash the feet of the guests who would come in after a long journey. People would wash their feet to rest after a long journey and to give them a clean start onto the next leg of their travel. They'd come and rest, and it was part of that kind of preparation of moving forward, of going on to the next step, of journeying ahead. And I think that's the message that Jesus is really trying to give to his disciples. Jesus washes their feet in order to tell them that they have another journey ahead. He's giving them a clean start to what comes next and sending them off into that unknown. And as Jesus is doing that, he has a few words for his disciples in those last moments. You see, even as Jesus knows his death is imminent, he knows his arrest is coming soon. And these his last moments together with his disciples, he's not thinking about himself, he's not preparing for what he has to do. He's preparing his disciples for what comes next. And the words he says to his disciples are really remarkably simple. There aren't any parables, there's no riddle or analogy or anything to figure out. tells them this. He says to wash one another's feet. Do unto each other what I have done to you. Love one another the way I have loved you. And it's those simple words that I hope all of us can hear coming to us tonight in this place. Because we're a people who also have a journey to make. All of us, when we leave this place, will journey out into a world that's full of uncertainty. A world that's full of doubt. We're going out from this place into a place we don't know, into a place that can be very scary. And so those are Jesus' words echoing to us tonight. And that's why on a night like this we gather together to wash one another's feet, to care for one another and to love one another, so that we can be sent out into that world that is scary and unknown and mysterious. And so it's as we journey together out into that unknown future that we look to our God who is journeying to the cross for us. Amen. The Holy Gospel according to John, the 13th chapter. Now before the festival of the Passover, Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart from this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The devil had already put it into the heart of Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. And during supper, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, got up from the table, took off his outer robe, and tied a towel around himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was tied around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus answered, "You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Peter said to him, "You will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no share with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "The one who has bathed does not need to wash, except for the feet, but is entirely clean. And you are clean, though not all of you." For he knew who was to betray him. For this reason he said, "Not all of you are clean." After he had washed their feet, had put on his robe, and had returned to the table, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you should also do as I have done to you. Very truly, I tell you, servants are not greater than their masters, nor are messengers greater than the one who sent them. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Now the Son of Man has been glorified, and God has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me. And I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord.